Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jim Powell Report. I'm your host, Jim Powell, and today we have distinguished attorney and author, Professor Alan Dershowitz, with us today here on Martha's Vineyard at his home. It's a beautiful October day, and we are so pleased to be with you and to have this little interview again.
Well, we've done this so many times that it's part of my Martha's Vineyard experience, talking to you.
It's a wonderful tradition.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And the weather's beautiful here. It's 75 degrees here on Martha's Vineyard, and it's the day after the Boston Red Sox beat the Yankees.
By the skin of their teeth, my nails. I couldn't watch. It was so hard. I was sure they would get that walk-off. All they needed was a double, and the game was over. And then that last play with the challenged call. It was a great victory.
Yes, and the Yankees have always been a formidable opponent. And you've been a great Yankees fan for years.
Oh, no, Red Sox fan.
Red Sox fan.
You know, I grew up in Brooklyn.
Okay.
All right. 1955.
Oh, there you go. There's the proof.
Brooklyn Dodger World Series championship ring,
Whose was
owned
that?
by Don Zimmer, who was a good-looking second baseman who started Game 7 in 1955 that the Dodgers won. So I grew up hating the Yankees, loving the Dodgers. Then when I moved to Boston in 1964, it was the most natural thing in the world for me to be a Red Sox fan. But, you know, in this age of partisanship, I want to make sure that people know how I root. When Aaron Judge comes up, I stand up and I give him applause. I refuse to boo any players. I give tremendous applause when Jeter used to get up. Any great Yankee, they're going to get my support. Look, I'm rooting for the Red Sox, but I recognize great talent on the other side.
That's good. Well, I wonder how the Red Sox are going to do against Houston. And you know, as you said in your book, prediction is very difficult, especially about the future.
That was Yogi Berra. Talk about great ball players.
Yes.
One of the greatest catchers in the history of baseball.
Yes.
Look, nobody can predict the outcome of a baseball game. Baseball is different than any other sport. In basketball, when a great team is playing a mediocre team, you pretty much know who's going to win. Football, the same thing. Not baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball, any team can beat any team on any given day.
That's right.
And it's utterly unpredictable.
Yeah, and that's what makes it such a great sport to watch for spectators and to unify our country and spectators. Well, I have been very pleased to hear your logical and intellectual approaches to our Constitution and to our country. And you're a prodigious author. I think this is
Number 40.
Book number 40.
Right.
and 41 is probably right over the
I've
horizon.
already written it. It's not yet published, and I do a lot of my writing on Martha's Vineyard. And, you know, I've written on so many different subjects. And the people on the vineyard love when I write a book if it supports their point of view. But if it doesn't support their point of view, you know, suddenly...
It challenges their intellectual foundation.
Assume something that I'm not willing to assume about some Chilmark people, namely the presence of a willingness even to think intellectually. There are some people in this community that are so biased and bigoted and closed-minded that they won't even listen to another point of view.
They must not be so secure in their own intellectual footing.
Well, a lot of these people, the people particularly who came out against me, are privileged, entitled, people who didn't earn their own money, they inherited it, or they got it through divorces. These are people who asked me to get their kids into college. These are people who would call me in the middle of the night to help a kid who got arrested. These are people who would call me because one of the kids was expelled from school, but suddenly I said something they disagreed with. That is, I made the same arguments relating to Donald Trump that I made relating to Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and suddenly they won't engage with me, they won't talk to me. If they hear I'm going to be somewhere, they will walk out. They want trigger warnings. Look, some of them are too stupid, to put it very bluntly, to understand the difference between supporting a political point of view. I don't support President Trump. I oppose almost all of his policies, and supporting the civil liberties of people. But some of them are smart enough to understand and they just pretend not to understand.
Because they're more concerned about their own agenda and what they get out of it, rather than how important and sacred the Constitution is.
People don't care about the Constitution, due process, equal protection of the laws, free speech. They care about results. They just want Trump out of there. They want him impeached, or they want Hillary Clinton, lock her up. You know, the number of people who today really care about civil liberties is diminishing. Even the American Civil Liberties Union today cares more about results. They put millions of dollars into a campaign to defeat Kavanaugh rather than to defend civil liberties. Look, Kavanaugh wasn't my choice. I wouldn't have picked him. Merrick Garland was my choice. I'm a liberal Democrat. But you can't just deny people the presumption of innocence unless all you care about is results.
Right. And I thought I read that you thought that Kavanaugh was Trump's best choice for not putting a justice that would move the court any farther right.
Well, I thought he was his least worst choice. That is, if you had the four people who he was considering, Kavanaugh was closer to the center, believer in judicial restraint, less likely to move the court dramatically and quickly to the right. Again, not my choice, but I think people will be surprised at how slowly he moves. He won't move precipitously to try to change the Constitution.
That's good thinking. Back to your point about the biases of many people here.
Yeah.
If it doesn't support their opinion, then they're against it. What is fueling the effort of those who want to ignore the constitutional rule of law and precedent?
Well, you know, these are people with totalitarian minds often. These are people who just, they know the truth. They don't have to tolerate any other point of view. I mean, they're in Chilmark. And in Chilmark, they know the truth with a capital T. Why have to listen to a different point of view? They were born privileged, born with the truth. No reason to have debate or dispute. That's just a waste of time. The level of intolerance that I experienced this year in Chilmark, I have never experienced anywhere else in the world. I've been to China, I've been to Cuba, I've been to Russia, and I've been to Chilmark. And I have to tell you, the level of intolerance in Chilmark was greater than any place I've ever been in my life.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well,
but
I'm sorry about those people.
Yes.
It didn't affect me. I'm not changing my views because of a bunch of bigots.
And you're reflecting the goodness of the U.S. Constitution.
I'm trying my best.
And you in your book, and in all your books actually, you go back to the U.S. Constitution, and then you lay out systematically the soliloquies of what would happen or what could happen if you look at different hypotheticals.
Sure. And, you know...
In purely intellectual
But most
context.
of these folks don't care. They just want Trump impeached or Trump out of office. And that's their prerogative, but they should do it through the ballot box.
Are they pushing that agenda so much because they're trying to use, I want to say, media or public opinion to help impact or affect votes?
I think it backfires. I don't think Americans want to hear intolerance. I think Americans want to hear people get together. They want to have people converse with each other. Americans are in the middle. Americans don't represent what's going on in Chilmark or what's going on in extreme right-wing areas. Americans are centrists. And the Chilmark folks couldn't win one state if they ran for election as Democrats. They don't represent the mainstream of America. They don't even represent the mainstream of Martha's Vineyard. And they don't even represent the mainstream of Chilmark. They're just a small group of entitled brats who think they know more than anybody else and who don't want to hear opposing points of view. It's distressing, but it's the reality.
I wish we could take them all out to a baseball game. You know, I'm thinking of James Earl Jones in the movie Field of Dreams.
Oh, what a great movie.
And when he's there with Kevin Costner, and he gives Kevin Costner a little lecture about the history of baseball and how baseball unites us
Right.
and all of the vision that goes with that. And then it softens people's hearts. Are we at a point that we have been, there's been such noise that people are desensitized to feeling the goodness of, well, it's not just baseball, but of the Constitution and of the good in people that are trying to be public servants?
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, in addition to baseball, Martha's Vineyard used to unite people. You know, the bass derby, the beach. Everybody loves the vineyard.
I'm thinking at Menamsha at sunset.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. You clap when the sun goes down. But now this past summer, the vineyard didn't unite. It divided. People just wouldn't talk to people who represented other points of view. And it really hurt the life on the vineyard this summer. I have a thick skin. I've been doing this for 55 years, so it doesn't affect me, but you know, it impacted my friends, my family, old friends. Just wouldn't talk to each other because somebody said that maybe he did something that might have helped Donald Trump in some indirect way, and that's it. We're never going to talk to you again.
And I've been down to listen to you speak at the Hebrew Center,
Right.
and you know.
Well, the Hebrew Center won't invite me anymore.
And you know, now
They won't invite me, the Hebrew Center.
wow.
Because you know, they have their views. They have their views on Israel, and my views are different from those of the rabbi. And so we now have our own congregation right here on the porch, where our friends come and do things that are not divisive. Right.
That's good. Well, one of the things that, as I read through, one of the topics that came up in your last book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump, was about you recommended that Congress should appoint a nonpartisan commission of experts to investigate the entirety of the 2016
Absolutely.
election. Would you please discuss that a little
The
bit more?
2016 election was a disaster. I do think Russia tried very hard to influence the outcome of the election, whether they did or not. That's what a commission would look into. I think
And get to the bottom of.
Yeah, Comey had a very negative impact on the election. I think what he did helped to defeat Hillary Clinton, but the appointment of a special counsel didn't move the ball forward at all, because the investigation was conducted in the dark, behind closed doors, grand jury. We don't know any more today than we knew before. Oh, we know that Manafort did this thing, we know that Gates did this thing, but we really haven't learned very much that we didn't know or couldn't have found out. And that's why I was in favor of a nonpartisan, like a 9/11 commission.
Right.
To get to the bottom of things, move forward. Let's not focus obsessively on what happened. Let's focus on how to prevent Russia, China, other countries from unduly influencing our election.
That's right. Rather than look backwards, let's look forward. Which that's one point you brought out in your book many times, was that the purpose of I want to say impeaching or whatever the process is to look at, hey, what could happen again? You know, let's prevent this.
Yeah. You know, one good thing about what happened this summer is I got to know many more people from Oak Bluffs and Edgartown and Vineyard Haven, most of whom were extremely supportive. I kept getting letters, if these guys don't want to talk to you, come to Edgartown. We'd love to talk to you. Come to Oak Bluffs.
Yes.
We'd love to talk to you. And so I've gotten to know more of the island than I previously knew, living for 50 years in Chilmark. This is my 50th year.
Yeah, well, this is a wonderful place to live.
Oh, it is.
And it's wonderful to live in a place where you feel at home. And you can, I mean, Martha's Vineyard is beautiful. And personally, a lot of people know that I've been a lifelong Republican, but that I've also worked on Jimmy Carter's campaign from headquarters in Washington, and Senator Paul Tsongas, because it's important to work with both sides.
I have the same thing. I voted Democrat all the time, but when Bill Weld ran, I voted for him. My wife didn't, but we talked about it. You know, it wasn't this kind of, if you're on that side, I need to have a trigger warning so I don't ever run into you, and God forbid we have a conversation and maybe I could persuade you or you could persuade me. We have to get back to being able to talk to each other.
Yes, discourse is critical. Do you think that the GOP, that with the Kavanaugh hearings, that the GOP has inflicted permanent damage with respect to getting women to vote for the GOP or for GOP candidates?
It's so complicated. A majority of white women still support Trump and the Republican Party, but a majority of women don't. Identity politics has become, unfortunately, so important. Who you are. I wish we could get back to the days of Martin Luther King, where a person is judged by the quality of their character, not by their identity, not by their gender, their sexual orientation, their race, their religion. I love people of every background and of every ethnicity. I don't judge people based on these kinds of identity issues.
That divide.
And I think it's important. Yeah.
And they tag.
Yeah.
And when you label people and tag people and remind them, oh, you're a this, therefore you can't think any other way.
Yeah.
That takes away from the goodness of this great melting pot that makes our country strong.
And this island has always stood for that. We've always worked closely together with people of very, very different backgrounds, and we share a common love for the island. And I hope we can return to that. Look, some of the fault clearly lies with President Trump, who's been a very divisive president and has caused an enormous amount of emotion. But that's no excuse for intolerance. You don't fight intolerance on one side by becoming even more intolerant on the other side.
That's right. And I know the rhetoric has been negative. I'm thinking of Mitt Romney coming out at the beginning of his senatorial race. I knew him years ago, before he was even governor, on kind of a personal basis. And, I saw him sacking up garbage and pizzas and helping at a youth dance up in Boston.
He's a wonderful guy.
He did a lot of things with the youth in Boston and with a lot of programs, a lot of welfare programs to help disadvantaged people out. And I think that's why people voted for him. They saw he had a heart, and he was also fiscally conservative.
And he's brilliant.
And he's a brilliant,
brilliant guy.
He's a bean.
And he was a terrific governor.
Yeah.
And
I wondered why, as I've seen him become more negative and about different things. I think maybe that was part of losing the impact.
Well, look,
of the
people
race.
become negative when they're attacked. People blame Kavanaugh. If you're attacked by a woman, say the woman that Avenatti came up with, who may never have even met this man, who may, I'm not saying did, but may have made the whole story up out of whole cloth. She was 3 years older, she traveled in a different circle, she didn't go to the same schools. If you're attacked by somebody who you didn't even know, anger is a very appropriate response. And we see it. We see it today in politics. There may be too much anger in politics, but it's understandable, and I see it on both sides.
Yeah, it is. Good. Well, it's good that we bring that out.
You got to talk about these issues.
Yeah.
You can't just let them fester.
That's right.
People will be critical of me for even mentioning these issues about Martha's Vineyard. Got to talk about them because they're there.
They are, and they can be the glass bowl in the China, the big bull in the china shop.
Yeah.
But you don't promote more thoughtful discussion if, like you say, you just let it fester.
Well, let's hope next summer people will talk to each other, people will relate to each other, argue with each other. I had a wonderful experience where a young woman in her 20s, whose family I've known for years on the Vineyard, was very upset at what she thought my views were. But instead of being just angry, she invited herself to come over, and we spent an hour sitting right here talking about it. By the end of the hour, she had persuaded me of things that I hadn't thought of before because she's so much younger. And I had persuaded her because I have so much more experience. And we both ended up the conversation having benefited from it instead of just refusing to talk to each other. That's what the Vineyard should be like.
I remember my days back at the university. My two best friends, one was a hippie here from Chilmark, just right around the corner, and the other one's Richard Cohen from Saugus, Mass. And I remember he wanted to go into business management, and John wanted to promote rock concerts and had already put on Bonnie Raitt here on the island over at the Tabernacle by the time he was 19.
I probably saw it.
And
I used to go to the Tabernacle all the time. Yeah.
Those are great concerts.
Yeah.
And I wanted to help solve the world food problem, and wound up going down to Guatemala and doing some projects with the U.S. Aid. But we would get together at night after we had studied. We'd order a pizza, and then we would argue about whatever's in the New York Times that day. We'd argue it out. And I think Richard was really teaching me a very good process of arguing your point. What's your reasoning?
Look, I have the same thing.
And then we would stop and say, that's it, time for pizza and beer.
I have a 23-year-old grandson who's a medical student, and he disagrees with a lot of what I've been saying, but he has such cogent arguments, and we talk on the phone, we argue, we message each other, we email each other, and by the end of 10 backs and forths, he's persuaded me of something, I've persuaded him of something, we love each other, and we admire each other. In the end, we don't agree because he's 23 years old and I'm 80, and we have different worldviews, and don't expect us to agree about everything. But you can agree to disagree. You can disagree without being disagreeable.
And that civility is what we need to encourage. We need more civility. And as I read through your books, they all come to that measure of discourse that we need to discuss issues civilly, intellectually, based on reason, and of course it's the Constitution.
That's what I hope, but even, I fail that. I get angry and I strike out, and I don't pass my own test of civility all the time, because we're all human.
Right,
and
but
you attack me and my family.
You're on record
and
to be civil.
You're going to hear something in response. So we all have to be better at it. And I'm the first one to acknowledge that I have sometimes crossed those lines myself.
Oh, well, that's good you're being honest. That's good. Well, Professor Dershowitz, it's always an honor to interview you. I know you have some more pressing engagements tonight. And on this beautiful October day, I want to thank you for taking the time.
It's always a pleasure. Let's continue this from year to year until we
nice tradition.
Each turn 100. Okay.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching this interview with Professor Alan Dershowitz here on Martha's Vineyard. I'm Jim Powell, your host here on Martha's Vineyard Community Television. We'll see you again real soon.